All right, man, we're live. Episode 62, This Life in Tech. I'm Jason.
I'm Dan, and the person you can't hear, formerly known as the Sultan of Snake Oil.
Now, hold on. I can actually see my microphone raising up and down. You guys can't hear me.
Now it is, but you weren't able to do it at first. This is how we teach younglings how to use a SaaS.
I didn't think I was coming on here to get schooled today. Great.
What do you mean?
Listen, man, you know, the only reason he's doing it is because you encourage it.
Yeah, no, I spoke up, and that was my mistake.
No, you should speak up. You should tell this guy to go fuck himself.
It does nothing. It does nothing. I say it in front of coworkers, friends, family. It does nothing.
So sock him. You don't see him giving me shit.
What are you talking about? I give you shit all the time, too. What do you mean?
That's how much I fucking pay attention to what you say.
Right.
All right, boys. Welcome back, Brandon. It's always good to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, man. I enjoy you.
It's a little bit of comic relief.
No, man, I'm interested in this guy's idea. So you were talking. Let's just dig into this shit.
I'm upset that he threw away the hat.
Well,
I had to. The cat threw up in it, and I wasn't about to wash that mother sucker.
The fuck? How's the hat in a position to be thrown up in?
It was upside down on the floor, and the cat said, "Hey, this looks like a prime opportunity."
This is why cats are evil. I keep telling you.
A dog wouldn't do that.
It's trying to kill you.
Are you kidding me? A dog would throw up anywhere.
Not mine.
Not mine. I don't know what you're talking about, man.
They're much more private. They don't want. They have an embarrassment aspect to where they're embarrassed after they throw up or something like that. Yeah. I don't want them to be. Our cats are like, I don't care.
Cat, exactly. Cats just don't give a damn about anything that they do. I mean, you know, I kind of enjoy it. I mean, I don't have a whiny little dog pouting around the house.
No, but your wife has one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys.
All right.
So software as a service. Do we want to talk in general, like abstract software as a service? Do we want to pick a specific service as an example?
I don't think it matters.
Fuck it. Let's take Office 365 because for me that's the hallmark, and it goes all the way back to Microsoft's original vision in the '90s called Hailstorm.
I have never heard about Hailstorm before.
Well,
Can you give us a brief history?
Yeah, sure. Parts of it turned into. Do you remember when Hotmail rolled out Passport?
Yeah.
And then Passport became live, and now we have just the Microsoft system.
Outlook.com.
Yeah, so that's more or less the federated authentication system for Hailstorm, and then Hailstorm is this vision of exactly what Office 365 is. Office as a service, where you don't need a thick client to access it anymore.
You know, I've always been fond of keeping stuff in-house. You know, even back when I was living in Florida and we hosted our own services, we had our own DNS, own mail, everything was ours. And I just, something about me I don't trust other people with my stuff. I don't know that I don't know what goes on in the back end of their technology. Whereas if it's in-house, I can see all of the traffic that's coming in and out. I know whether or not I did my patches. I know whether or not if anything breaks, it's my fault.
Do you?
Yes, Dan, I do. I'm saying that if there is a fault, 9 times out of 10, it's something that I did and I can troubleshoot and I can go back and look at and see what it is that I messed up on and try to prevent that from happening again. Whereas I don't know if I can trust some third-party vendor that I'm maybe paying, or it's a free service even, like say Google. You know, there's always that level of uncertainty with that.
So how does that scale when all of a sudden you've got, 1,000 employees, or at a 10,000 person company, or 100,000?
I can see how if you're especially if you're running, bare metal, that could be very costly very quick. And even data centers, virtualization might still be a very costly option. But I don't know. I mean, you're paying for peace of mind at that point. If you are confident in your employees, your infrastructure, operations, security, all that jazz.
Oh, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah. You're probably thinking the same thing I'm thinking.
Well, no, let's talk about employees. What should an employee be doing? Pick one. It doesn't matter. What do we, if we're running the business, want employees to do?
Their job.
Right.
It's, you know.
Yeah, I would agree. So if this employee is an accounting employee, we want them accounting, right?
Right.
Or if they're a marketing employee, we want them marketing, so forth and so on. Including, let's not forget that we're users too.
Yes.
So we should be doing whatever it is we're employed to do as a function or a role or even a duty, right?
Right. I mean, everybody's supposed to follow guidelines, policies, procedures, all that jazz, stay within their scope and perform their function.
Well, that's interesting though. So do we pay people to follow policies or do we pay people to do their job?
We pay them to do their job within the parameters of the policies of the company.
Right. And we hope that our policies reflect what those jobs are, right?
Right. And if they don't, you know, we expect, well, at least the company that Dan and I work for, it's expected that you push up towards your manager and say, hey, this is a problem. It needs to be addressed.
Right. Because maybe their job has changed and now it doesn't reflect positively in the policy, or maybe we wrote the policy wrong and it doesn't reflect their job from the beginning. Right.
Or technologies and services update. Things don't necessarily apply in previous policies and procedures. Stuff needs to get audited and checked and updated.
Sure. Okay. So we're in agreement then. Now, if collectively employees should be employing, right, doing their job, do we want them spending their time monkeying around with thick client software on their computer?
If it's not configured properly, then, you know, that would be a hassle, sure. But I mean, I could see that taking away as much excess functionality as possible and giving them exactly what it is that they need. I mean, it's a matter of preference, really. I mean, if your infrastructure is configured properly,
that's a big.
Yes, in a lot of companies, it's a matter of preference at that point.
So I'm going to go back to the one aspect you're talking about. Hey, we've got these internal employees, and we can see at any given time, you pick the year, I think it started like in 1998. The biggest threat to any company is the insider threat. Over 85% of all issues come from the user.
That's an agreeable statement.
I mean, that's just that's
reflecting in today's
right? Part of the FBI, you know, given whatever you want to believe into that aspect. But let's say they're only, I don't know, 50% correct. So that still means we've got 40-some% of our issues are from insiders. What if? So, have you looked at it all like in the Linux One by IBM?
I know.
It's an interesting concept because they took everything that you just said and then gave you the ability through an HSM, which you would keep on-prem, to where they see nothing. They just know that systems, you hold all the encryption keys. Your HSM, which is a FIPS 140-2 level 4 encryption module, which means if there is any tampering, it automatically zeroes itself out.
Well, right. So what is it that we need to trust? I mean, we need to trust that the employees do their job. We need to trust that we captured what their job is correctly in whatever these policies are, right? We need to trust that the technology we're giving the users actually enables them to do their job. So what I'm curious to find out is, why should we inherently trust software as a service less than, let's call it a traditional model?
So the way I go in this is everything depends on the totality of the circumstances. If I'm a large organization, if I'm a Fortune 500, I have the resources to be able to build it myself, because that brand is much more important to me than perhaps the couple tens of millions of dollars I might spend, because I have the resources to be able to focus, and we have such a large population internally that we can do it and do everything that Brandon said. But Fortune 500 means we're only limiting ourselves to 500 companies. There's a lot more than 500 companies. So
But clarify, do what in-house specifically?
The full end-to-end. ExxonMobil has the resources to produce their own Salesforce.com in the exact way in which they want, because they have the resources. So you don't have to put that into Salesforce, because you can do it yourself.
Right.
But now, again, what are they today? Fortune 5? I don't know. They're in the top 5. But now take a company that's at 2,000 employees. They don't have the resources to build a Salesforce.com. So now we transfer that type of product offering to them, and we focus the minimum resources that we have, or the little resources, on how do we proper secure that data in a way in which it still protects our brand, because I can't develop it.
Well, so let's stay with Office as our example then.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to figure out is in what technological framework does it ever make sense going forward to only have thick client Office software on a computer? When does that ever make sense now? As opposed to using Office 365, whether that's hosted by Microsoft or you build your own version of it, call it whatever you want.
One could argue functionality, but other than that, I don't see a reason. I mean, you're not going to get, say, the ability to grab headers from the Office 365 web client, which that doesn't apply to everybody. You know, that's one function out of several most users never use with the thick client as opposed to the web client.
So let's say, what percentage of users do you think need that functionality?
I'd say less than 1 or 2% of a company with, like, let's say 1,000 employees.
All right, so now we're talking, you know, the general population, which is where we always want to keep it, because there's always going to be cases where, hey, some people are allergic to penicillin.
Right.
So let's keep it in that. So I would say, and I haven't looked, so I'm going to look real quick. Office 365 offline client. Is there a way to use Word offline if you only have thin client? I haven't looked, so I'm just looking to see.
There is.
What's that?
There is.
There is. I just haven't looked. So if they have the offline client, I would say for the most part, then
yeah, well, no different than if
I think it's closer to 10% that need it, but still 90% of the population.
Yeah, well, maybe your salespeople need it when they're traveling. Like, tell me if I'm wrong, because I've not used this, but my understanding is if you use Chrome, you can use Google Docs in a cached offline mode.
Yes, that is correct.
Right. So, I mean, there's a perfect example of what we're talking about then.
Well, I mean, okay, so let's go back to, like, the sales users that you mentioned, or accounting. I know that some functions within applications like Excel, which is a part of Office, require significant resources and functions that are not available on the thin client for web. So, I mean, you have to take in consideration that some groups of employees might be a case-by-case anomaly.
What do you mean, like crunching numbers, like huge volumes of data sets in Excel?
Right. Like, say, you know, day-end reports, monthly reports, things like that require more.
Office 365 has an issue with pivot tables in the thin client version.
It does. It does.
Okay.
Found that out recently.
We're talking about the, you know, a 10% population rather than 90. So,
okay. Well, no. So, I mean, just forget it.
But that tomorrow, the pivot tables may not work.
Right. So let's use this as an example. Yeah, let's use it as an example, even though it's an exception, right? Because it's a meaningful exception. So then so in what conditions would you choose to have a local full Excel installation versus just accessing a machine in Azure?
Based off of requirements of job function.
But you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, well, I mean, I'm just thinking cost.
Because I would put it in a VDI. I would put it in a VDI, and in the event that you actually need that functionality, you're still, because then this way I can take a cheap, low-end computer, whatever is the cheapest at any given time, and they're always connecting to VDI.
Well, right, because what part of the point I'm trying to make too, and this couples back to Brandon's comment about trust and trusting local versus cloud. You know, there's an associated maintenance cost to not only general IT maintenance, but certainly to security maintenance. I mean, just think about even validating a control, right? Validating a control against a local instance is going to be more cumbersome and more expensive in the long term than validating that same control in a VDI or just in the thin, well, I should say the web client. I'm not going to call it thin, right? To me, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. I would agree.
So I don't, I'm sitting here thinking about the types of companies that I would start. Well, I'll take my research institute, for instance, right? Because in some ways it's a business. I mean, I have these people working on projects. We only use software as a service to generate our documents, to store our documents, to collaborate in our documents. I don't know in what instance I would ever buy a piece of software unless it was specialized. Meaning, there is no software as a service alternative. Like MATLAB is a great example. We use MATLAB heavily for machine learning. There is no software as a service alternative for that right now.
But is that running on your local system or is that running on a server?
We have the local version, not the server version, because Jesus Christ, you want to talk about price gouging. Listen, I mean, Jesus Christ, man, the base software itself is like $1,500. And then for every toolbox you want to access, it's another $200 to $500.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the same argument that we're making as to why we would do something in-house or elsewhere. When you're ExxonMobil, you don't care until oil runs out. Yeah,
right. Well, and then, and I totally agree with you, because at that point, if MATLAB isn't doing what you want as an exception to this software as a service model, and a software as a service model doesn't exist for it as some alternative, of course you're going to build it yourself because it's cheaper.
Yeah, sure. Because you can always use, depending if you're doing, different type of, we'll say big data. You can use R. You don't have to go off and buy the commercially equivalent product.
Well, right, and that's a local only. There's no software as a service model for R.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Shit, now I don't remember.
I don't know, but I think we should. I think in terms of transitioning this, just because of where we go, and many of these things is. We should talk the psychology aspect here, because every time you mention anything to Brandon, he immediately just wants to go and talk about how you're a hippie, which may be true, but I think you're more closer to a shaman. But if Brandon always has this need of feeling like he's being attacked rather than wanting to have a discussion, it's not like he's got some type of image he needs to uphold.
Okay.
So Sultan without the hat.
Here, I'll do this for you. Is that better?
Yeah. No matter what it is, you always feel like you're being attacked. Whereas, hey, we would just, you can come on here and and have your input into whatever the technology discussion is.
I feel like this is
remind you of, or does Jason remind you of your father?
Oh boy.
Actually, you don't want to go there, because you kind of remind me more of my dad than Jason does.
But I don't tell you I don't make you feel like you're wrong all the time.
Yes, you do. What are you talking about?
You just happen to be. It's completely different.
So let's connect this back to software as a service, though, man. So is there something inherently untrustworthy about a software as a service, or do you have trust problems?
I have trust problems, and that's easy for me to admit. One of the most human things about being human is the fact that most of us fear the unknown, and I don't know whether or not this person is using whatever data they may or may not collecting correctly, responsibly, ethically.
All right, so let me ask this, because you're a big Arch guy. How do you know that? Do you do any type of static and dynamic code analysis on every library that is being pushed down through the Arch repository?
I do not know.
How is that any different?
I do very minimal review on the things that I need, but as far as every single library and component goes, no, of course not. I don't have that kind of time. I do put some trust on things that I don't bother to analyze.
Right. So you extend some measure of trust to, let's just even take the program itself, Pac-Man. Forget about the repository, which, by the way, is a type of cloud service in some sense.
Yeah. It's a hosted repository somewhere outside of my network.
Right. So you agree, though, you extend trust to at least Pac-Man.
I do. And within the recent years, a bit blindly.
Which, well, by the way, which I think is rational, because I would suggest that you do have better things to spend your time on than untrusting, untrusting Pac-Man, right?
Here's the thing. I do monitor telemetry. I do monitor traffic within my own network. If I see something that looks suspicious, sure, I'll launch an investigation. But if everything's quiet, I'm not seeing anything being pushed out to weird places, I'm not going to really give a crap.
Right. And I think that's completely reasonable. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, man. So why not trust? Why not trust Office 365?
Because they have an interest, and I believe that they have the ability to harness as much information as they would like, because we are providing them all of our information and using them as a service.
Sure.
Therefore, there's that, well, do we really know beyond a shadow of a doubt type question? You know, are they doing what is right? Are they doing what's ethical? Are they staying out of our emails?
Absolutely doing everything that is ethical.
According to who?
According to the ethics philosophies. I think what you mean to say is, are they doing everything that would be considered moral?
Well, and I would suggest, I would take what you're saying, Brandon, and I would twist it slightly, and I would suggest that actually Microsoft has more of an interest in doing the right thing than Arch. Arch isn't making any money off you, but Microsoft is, right? And they want to keep that money rolling in. So why would they do anything if you just look at the business as an entity and its own incentive systems? Why would it do anything to harm it itself? It wouldn't, right?
You would think that, but I mean, there's been cases where companies have been caught in the past selling data off when they were making money, either via you as a product or you as a customer.
What, like
Facebook? Did they break a contract?
Do what?
Did they break a contract?
I couldn't tell you, honestly.
And we don't know. I mean, it's a risk that we all take in one way or another. You're taking it with Arch for yourself, because your risk in this particular case, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Arch one way or the other. I'm just saying that Ubuntu is so much easier.
Sure, I'm not going to deny that.
So, but we all take a risk. Your risk is for yourself, and you're not doing this a specific code review on things inside of Arch. So now, when you magnify those things, it comes down, if we're all breathing the same air, then if the air gets poisoned, well, we're all going to die. So I'm willing to put certain things in a Microsoft bucket or a Google bucket. Maybe not Facebook. I personally am not a part of Facebook. I haven't been for years.
It's okay, me either.
But it doesn't mean I still have LinkedIn and I still have Twitter. There's stuff going on. And look at what those clowns just recently did. In what world is it ever okay to have the passwords in the clear text? I mean, what were they thinking?
I think
that's a rookie mistake.
They did say it was a bug that was discovered, so I'm guessing somebody wasn't thinking.
Yeah, the bug is we chose to not use something like PBKDF2 with 100 million iterations like what Apple does, or utilizing, and I always get these mixed up, scrypt or bcrypt with the same type of rounds going through. The bug was they didn't use it. Let's be clear. They did. That's the only way passwords end up.
I'm not giving them a cop out on this. I'm just stating what they said.
Yeah. Oh no, I know. So let's be honest about what it is. It's math. Either the math was applied or it wasn't.
Well, there's a broader concern too. That why was the software iterating over passwords in any state, any state whatsoever, plain text or non-plain text, in a way where it was being logged?
Yeah, even better.
I mean, what were you doing? Reading? I don't know what the fuck they were doing in the software, but okay. So is that an indictment of software as a service, or is that an indictment of human behavior and bad decision making, or is that an indictment of how fucked up authentication is?
Well, the last two.
Human error is still going to apply with software as a service because humans are still managing said software as a service outside your network.
Okay, so knowing that there's going to be human error, and knowing that the way we access software as a service may be just inherently flawed because of the way it works through authentication, is that reason enough to not trust it?
I trust nothing.
I think it's trust but verify.
Oh, pulling out the fucking Reagan phrase. Wow. Were you even alive when Reagan was president?
No, I was born in '90.
Yeah, he wasn't even alive, and we were talking about the original stuff from Microsoft's vision of Office 365.
Oh, that's true, right? No wonder.
No wonder.
No wonder you don't. That Hailstorm makes no sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was never a product. I mean, they didn't release something called Hailstorm. It was part of just their developer vision, and that's why, well, a big reason why .NET got created.
Yeah. So, but I mean, whenever you look at it, I mean, we all use Twitter. It's a SaaS, right? Mm-hmm. And isn't it interesting that the amount of people, including Jack, were just completely shitting all over Facebook with the Cambridge Analytica, and we find out that they were doing it too?
Yeah, that was...
Isn't that interesting? Right?
Well, it's really easy for someone to sit there and go, haha, you got in trouble, when they're actually doing the same thing that you did.
They haven't got caught yet.
Well, right. I mean, because just behaviorally, who often points fingers? People that are as much, if not more, guilty.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we take a look at this, we all have some type of extension of trust to Twitter. We have some type of extension of trust to LinkedIn. Where I draw the line is Facebook. We all have a line, but just where is it? If I had my own company with unlimited resources, sure, I wouldn't use any SaaS model because I could build, in terms of an outsourced SaaS model, because I would just build it all myself.
Well, that's an interesting argument then too, because even if you were, let's say, a Fortune 5 and you chose to build your own sales force, which I've seen done at companies, right?
Yeah. Chances
are you're not doing it solely with your own internal development team. You're going to outsource it so that you can not hit your own CapEx with that.
Maybe it just depends on the company. Like, I know that at least with certain projects that I was involved with, UBS does it all in-house. If they have contractors come in, they're coming in, they're on site using their equipment, and then they leave.
Right. No, that's exactly what I mean. Yeah.
So they're not, at least the code is there and it's following the same process they're putting in, but a UBS employee is the one supposed to be validating it.
Right. But the actual programming isn't always 100% done internally.
Sure.
That's a very common model.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, they're not an employee, technically speaking. They're certainly not a full-time employee. Correct. Should we trust their work?
Definitely perform an analysis and verify that it's not, leaking out to places.
We rely on a certain extent, regardless to the, all our different tools that we have, an HP Fortify, a Checkmarks, whatever. We're just relying on their capability of interrogating the code in order to speed up time. Because it's very challenging to go through the millions of lines of code that it takes to create an application. So we have to do something to speed it up. And so we're relying upon that. But there's still something always going to be found.
Well, and it's always, to me, a question of where do I want to spend my labor dollars? I mean, look, if our goal is to walk this path from A to B, right? And we're constantly stopping to smell the flowers, that's one thing. If we're constantly stopping to smell flowers, but before we smell it, we make sure there's no spiders inside or bees or whatever, that's yet another thing, right? And that labor cost becomes exponentially more invested in not walking the path, which is what we ought to be doing from the beginning, but in doing all this other side stuff.
Right.
Which doesn't directly help you get from A to B down the path.
True.
So then my question is, why are you doing it? I mean, what's the end goal? I mean, so what happens if you find a bee in every flower that you want to smell? How does that help you walk the path?
Tell the users to stop smelling flowers and get to moving on to point B.
Here we go again with the users, man.
Just saying, man.
You don't see yourself as a user, do you?
I do, and I of course do what users do.
Yes, we know that. Patient zero.
Hey, at least I validated that a certain part of the IDS worked.
True.
But no, I mean, it's users know what it is they're supposed to be doing, and they intentionally goof off. Maybe decide to use company assets on their lunch break or something. Maybe it's something so stupid of checking Amazon to see if their package made it to their house. But in doing so, they're not just visiting directly Amazon. It's whatever ads are associated with it or whatever. And because of that, they end up tripping security alarms and they get put on naughty lists. And it can be an issue, even to something so stupid as, like I said, checking a package on Amazon. And if it's a pain in the ass line to walk if you take those functions away from the users. They tend to cry, and it can cause pushback.
Well, so if we recognize that human beings are going to be humans and they're going to do things like check their delivery status, then why do we make a rule telling them that they can't do that?
Because we want them to work. That's what they're being paid for, right? You're not there to check Amazon. You're there to do whatever function with the company in which you were employed for.
And so are we saying that by checking your package delivery status, that somehow detracts from your productivity?
Put it to you this way. It was once told to me that theft of company time is just as bad as theft of a company dime. So if you're taking time away from your employer by doing whatever it is you want to do, that's still just as bad as if you stole from the register.
Well, what if they did it during their lunch break?
Well, at that point, you shouldn't be using company assets to do that. If you have your own personal device, which most companies these days do have some form of a bring your own device,
sure,
be it for email or whatever, you have your own equipment for that. Most people have smartphones these days. And if you don't, then sucks to be you. You're going to have to wait. If you want to be within the scope of the policies that you signed on and said that you agreed upon. If you don't want to do that, then by all means, use company assets, violate policies and procedures, and risk the chance of getting written up or dealt with by your boss or human resources or whoever.
Yeah, I don't necessarily look at it. I don't necessarily care if they go to certain sites like an Amazon or somewhere like that, as to whether or not, because I'm not their boss. That's their boss is going to figure out whether or not they were being productive or not. Because, 8 hours if you're a salaried employee, doesn't necessarily mean it's 8 to 5 or 9 to 6. I'm judged based on, do I deliver my projects on time and on budget? I'm more concerned with the validity of the website in which they're going to, which is why I have to rely on things to ensure that the internet connections they are making from a company resource, when it brings back data, it's safe. That's my concern.
Sure. Well, I just wonder if there's something better we all ought to be doing other than implementing and controlling rules around checking package delivery statuses.
Well, either the employee doesn't have enough to do, or our restrictions are, I don't know.
Or maybe they're just human.
Right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a matter of, if you're going to sign an agreement saying, I will not do this, and then you violate said agreement, that kind of, you're gambling your chances of remaining and being employed.
Well, I mean, certainly that's true to a degree. And we also have to recognize that, okay, if I sign that doesn't mean I'm aware of my future self breaking that rule.
Doesn't matter.
What?
If you sign it, you sign it. That's you saying, I agree to this policy, and I as the employee will not violate this policy, or I recognize that there are consequences for violation of this policy.
Okay, but we can recognize that there's cases in which we would want somebody to break a rule, right?
Never.
I don't know. Could you provide an example?
Yeah. Okay. So let's say there's some type of emergency, and because of the conditions of that emergency, the only way to contact help is through the web, let's say.
And they're all going to perish.
I mean, don't we want to break the rule that says don't use the web for anything but work purposes?
If you have one of these, you can do that.
Well, but not all places allow phones inside either.
Well, if that's the point, I mean, if employees are allowed to have coffee breaks, smoke breaks, or lunch breaks, tell your boss, hey, I got an emergency. I need to step outside for a few minutes, and don't be at work on your phone.
No. I mean, like, imagine the person sitting next to you has a heart attack.
At which point you pick up your desk phone and call 911.
All right, but what if the phones are out?
Then you can use your cell phone to dial 911.
But you don't have your cell phone with you. Stay with the example. The only way to get help is through the browser.
Someone in that building
is going to die.
Yeah. At that point, that's a bit extraneous.
I'm not a medical professional.
Places that typically don't have, cell phones allowed in the office tend to have emergency services phones, something. Even if it's a phone that's out, there's some kind of separate line attached to the wall that says, security on it or dial 911 or something like that.
Okay, but we recognize that employee's not doing their job. Their job isn't.
Is that because the person had a heart attack and he's no longer capable of doing his job?
Well, I mean, that person for sure. But there's a broader point here that I'm trying to drive at with this extreme example is that we can recognize there's conditions in which we want people to deviate from the behavior that we even make them agree to follow, right?
Right, and most employees are able to. I mean, most employers are able to sit there and go, okay, I can recognize what some of these special conditions are.
Right.
But if it's, I don't know, you decided to do something that wasn't necessarily an emergency by any means, you're still subject to whatever is deemed not a case that can just be waived off by your employer.
Well, so my broader question then is why do we want to live in an environment in which it's rule driven instead of living in an environment where we let people be people and judge them based on their productivity and output?
You're not being paid to be a people. You're being paid to be a cog in the machine.
Oh, I don't know, man. Why the fuck do you want to live in a world like that?
It's not a matter of whether or not I want to live in one. That's reality, is that if you were not there to be a thinker, you're there to be a worker.
Well, but wait, workers think too, man. I mean, they're people. You can't get around that.
Sure, but they don't get paid to think. They get paid to. I mean, if you're an assembly line worker, your job is, I am bender, please insert girder.
Down. That's basically it.
Pretty much.
Right, but we're not talking about factory work, and even if we were, we can agree that in the next 10 years, that's not going to exist anymore anyway, right?
That's what they said 10 years ago.
More than likely. But we're already seeing the amount of automation. It just continues to increase with the amount of automation and machinery. I mean,
right.
One could argue that 20 years from now, a lot of the jobs in IT are going to be automated.
Certainly security should be removed.
Most likely.
Most of it. Hey, well, boys, I don't care if you all continue the conversation, but I got a hard stop that I got to bail.
What is your girlfriend calling you?
No, but I got people that are supposed to be here at 4:00. So I guess
gotcha.
I got to get running.
Whatever, nerd.
Well, I think that was a good discussion then, man. Let's end here then.
All right.
That's episode 62 in the bag. We had a great conversation. The Sultan's back. Brandon.
Maybe he'll come back again.
Well, let's see. It's up to him.
Maybe.
I don't need to make a rule to govern that.
You're a lawless individual, Jason. Have a nice day.
Later, everybody.
All right, folks. Bye.